Absolute Green Lantern issue 2 is officially out, and man, does this keep me in absolute suspense. Because not only are we getting more answers to what happened when Abin Sur arrived in town that would end up confronting Hal, John, and Joe, but this also gives us an idea, perhaps, of how this story is going to progress, and more towards what Abin Sur really wanted to do by coming to Earth. And I'm very excited to explore this series, and my god, I cannot wait, because I love Green Lantern, and this series keeps me invested with every issue. Well, we only have 2 issues out, which is incredible. Now, let's jump into issue 2 of Absolute Green Lantern. And we start issue 2 the same way that we did with issue 1. With this dark ring beckoning to Joe, saying, Sojourner Mullen, which this is Joe's full name. We're going to call her Joe for now, since that is her nickname. Be without fear. You exist at the green level of light. You must have knowledge of yourself to command the flame. You must be without fear. Entirely without fear. As this cuts to Joe in the present, as she's clasping her head, seeing as this is speaking to her right now. As she is talking to Hal Jordan, as the previous issue, she came to the diner after Hal basically just eviscerated innocent civilians due to what the Black Hand was doing. And Hal essentially says that Joe looks like Abin Sur, asking what he did to her. And she says she has no idea. She says, I mean, you were there. You know everything I do. But if it's not good, I'm hearing things, seeing things. And I could feel this pull. Something was leading me here. Turns out it's you. So what's with your hand, Hal? And Hal goes on to explain that it's the Black Hand, and that he doesn't want her to get too close to him, as it's dangerous and it's a threat. It might end up dealing with anything that it deems a threat to him or dangerous to him. That's what happened to the diner, and he feels this in his head. And Joe is asking, so that's what happened? You felt threatened? But Hal says he kept everything in check. He wanted to try and keep it from killing anyone else, but I guess he doesn't have the willpower to keep it in check. And his will is what is the most important, and that seems to be how it works. But they don't know all the rules so far, as they say, remember what happened to John, or Guy Gardner. As we then cut back to the town that we're at, when Hal says, remember what happened to him? As Abin Sur touches down in the middle of town with the police officers surrounding him, crowds filming Abin Sur. As he says, I am Abin Sur. Have understanding that I come to you from the Green Lantern. I exist at the green level of light. Be without fear. It's then that we see Guy Gardner as he tells his men to put their guns down and tries to talk to Abin Sur, saying that he's the authority here, the law, asking if he understands what the law is. Abin Sur reaches his hand out with a green light spiraling, saying, I have understanding. Judgment will now commence. As the officers end up pulling a gun, and Guy tries to get him to stop what he's doing, as Abin Sur says, judgment in progress. Guy Gardner, you are not an entity who currently exists in the spectrum of light. Be without fear. And as Abin Sur continues to hold his hand out, telling Guy to be entirely without fear, the rest of the crew join up. John, Hal, and Joe show up to try and essentially tell them what's going on. Everything that happened with a dome over the town, basically sealing them all in, and Joe trying to convince Guy to put his gun down and try to reevaluate the situation, hoping to get things more under control and not potentially escalate things, as this is first contact with alien life. And after asking Guy if that's truly what he wants to escalate this situation with the alien, we cut back to the diner in present day, with Hal ends up telling Joe if she saw the crowd. And she said she was watching Guy, and so she wasn't really paying attention. But Hal, with just a shocked look on his face as he is just in utter disbelief, saying how everybody was holding their breath. There was shock, fear, and religious awe of what was going on, waiting to see how Guy would react and then decide their fate. Guy puts his gun down and tries to talk to Abin Sur as well once more, asking what he wants. As Hal says everybody breathed out, you could feel the tension break. I think somebody started clapping. And then, in the next page, Abin Sur's green light flashes and engulfs and seemingly kills and evaporates Guy Gardner. So, right off the bat, seemingly Guy Gardner in the Absolute Universe, dead, gone. Which I was not expecting that, but Guy's not really my favorite Green Lantern, so I'm not too torn up about it. So him not being a Green Lantern in this universe, I'm okay with it for now. At least that's just me. Let me know if there's any 5 Guy Gardner fans out there. But this shocks everybody in the vicinity, as then people started screaming, with all Abin Sur saying was that Guy Gardner has been judged, judgment in progress, be without fear. As the police officers begin to shoot at Abin Sur, but he creates contracts around parts of his body, deflecting the bullets. As he keeps saying be entirely without fear, as by deflecting the bullets, crowd members are getting shot by the recoil, people are dying. Abin Sur then slices somebody in the head, and people are dying left and right, bullets being deflected, they're losing arms, as Abin Sur keeps deflecting every advance of violence. And so they go up to one of the officers who lost their hand, and as John is trying to stop the bleeding, Hal grabs the gun with determination in his eyes, and then faces off against Abin Sur, essentially in an attempt to try and, settle the situation, I guess, take him out. But Abin Sur calls out to Hal Jordan, saying that judgment is in progress. As Hal says it just seemed like the right thing to do. As John tells Joe to hold down the guy's arm to keep it from bleeding, but John goes up to Hal, telling him to put the gun down and off the trigger, because what happens next, it won't do much. Based on what they saw previously, Hal will probably just lose his arm anyway. The gun will be useless. And seemingly, John convinces Hal to just put the gun down, and the situation changes. As John Stewart is called by Abin Sur, as he says be without fear to him, and then, all of a sudden, Abin Sur goes back up to the lantern symbol that is in the sky. As now, people are dying, critically injured, or just dead, and everyone ran away, with our main trio so far just out of this area trying to deal with the person that was injured. And we cut back to the present. As Joe says, that was where you got the gun from, right? It was Rita's. You never did give it to John. And in the instance, Hal then makes a gun symbol with his black hand, as he then conjures up the gun, as he says, I guess I never got around to it. You should get out of here, Joe. This thing, it's hungry or something like hunger, something alien, but it wants the light. As Joe says, the green light, but Hal says any spectrum of light. It wants to not absorb it, that's not quite right. Supersede, overturn, it wants to win the argument, so it's very, very old. As Joe is just wondering what this means, and is telling Hal to kind of lose the gun because he's kind of worrying her. Hal pushes his hand to his temple, trying to temper himself, as he's thinking about everything with the influence of the black hand, saying it should have been forgotten, it should be weak, an idea nobody believes. But something fed it, something gave it a chance. Now it's everywhere, a little piece of everything, all the way out there, all the way in here, and I'm fighting it. Joe, as hard as I can, I don't want to listen. See, I don't want to. And as Hal motions the gun to his side, his eyes turn pitch black, as he says, but he keeps telling me I was right. And the speech bubble turns all black, seemingly that the black hand is influencing Hal's mind in this instance now, like he's losing his grip. And that's when we get the title card and title for this issue, The Abin Sur, Episode 2. I love it when even in a comic or a TV show just drops their title card later on in the episode, depending how it goes. But we then cut back to the past with our group, John, Joe, and Hal, in their respective diner, just going over the situation at hand. And how Hal kind of somewhat regrets the situation because he didn't really help anybody there. But John ends up talking to them, saying that despite everything, with all the adrenaline, we all wonder what we could have done differently. But like I said, Hal, maybe you weren't wrong. Whatever's happening here, whatever alien judgment is being leveled upon us, I don't think anyone's coming to save us from it. So if it comes to it, do you want to take Abin Sur out of the equation? As the final page of the issue shows John Stewart holding up the wedding ring that he had previously, as he says, because I think I know what I can do, as the issue ends. Now, based on everything that we've seen in this issue, I surmise that John Stewart is either going to be abducted somewhere or he's going to die. I really hope he doesn't I really hope he's not dead in this universe, because John Stewart is my favorite Green Lantern. But based off of this issue, it seems that the Black Hand, Abin Sur judging people, is maybe he's trying to create the Green Lantern Corps, trying to find people who can overcome great fear, because that is part of the Green Lantern motto and what has people, overcome and be part of the Green Lantern Corps with their insane willpower. And with what happened with Hal, perhaps he has a part of the darkness in him, and based off of what we've heard from it, the Black Hand in the green light, or the emotional spectrum as a whole, is fighting back with it. And perhaps dark side energy infusing this universe empowered the darkness of the Black Hand and the black light to an extent that it is, like Hal said, everywhere, trying to win some sort of cosmic argument, trying to take over and become the primary source of energy over the emotional spectrum as a whole. And it seems Hal is turning into that catalyst. He might become the Black Hand, be fully influenced by it, and end up creating the Black Lantern Corps, or maybe giving birth to the entity of death in the absolute universe of Necrom, absolute Necrom perhaps, for all we know. And maybe the first big storyline is probably going to build up to a new version of the Blackest Night, for all we know, or to prevent the Blackest Night. And Joe is going to be one of the first Green Lanterns, or lanterns of the emotional spectrum, to have to fight back against it. The beginning of this issue shows that she has to fight back against great fear, and perhaps that is going to be her character journey to fully master the green light. And based on Abin Sur and his judgment, quote unquote, he's trying to find avid vessels for the emotional spectrum's lights in general. At least that's my interpretation of it, so I'm curious to see how that's going to progress going forward. But let me know your thoughts and opinions on this issue and the future of this comic in general, with what's going to happen, in the comment section down below. And what's more, if you haven't already, subscribe, hit the notification bell for updates on future videos. It really helps, and it shows you guys enjoy the content I make here on the channel and shows you want to see more. Now, with all that said and done, I hope you all have an awesome day.